Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. I've lived in various neighborhoods, encountering all sorts of eccentric neighbors. But the one living next to me may take the prize for being the most insane. His erratic behavior and penchant for hurling insults at people were well known in our community. While it appeared as though he had some loose screws, it turned out he didn't have a diagnosed mental illness. He was simply unhinged and acted out intentionally. Considering his outrageous actions in this story, I am confident in labeling him as the worst neighbor in Bratislava, Slovenia. Just like any place, the rule in our neighborhood was clear. People couldn't trespass onto your property without permission. If you asked them to leave, they had to comply. Otherwise, they risked getting arrested. One fateful day, my neighbor took it upon himself to step onto my property and launch a tirade against me. He berated the appearance of my lawn due to the built-in sprinklers, claiming it would affect his own lawn negatively. To make matters worse, he targeted my wife's beautifully planted flowers, spewing venomous insults. That was the breaking point for my wife, who firmly told him to back off and leave us alone. This only fueled his rage, and he declared that he wouldn't leave the property until he had harmed my wife. Fearing for her safety, I quickly ushered her inside the house, ensuring the door was locked, and dialed emergency services. I had no clue what this unstable neighbor was truly capable of, but I was determined to keep him away from my wife at any cost. When the police arrived, they escorted us into the house, away from the neighbor's presence. We explained the situation, emphasizing his refusal to leave our property and the threat he posed to my wife's life. Little did we know that this was just the beginning, and things were about to escalate into sheer madness. To our surprise, the police had dispatched only 2 officers in a single patrol car. As a result, our unhinged neighbor was left unsupervised outside, and he decided to take things to a whole new level of insanity. He retrieved a rope, seemingly from his garage, and proceeded to tether the police car to his own vehicle. One of the officers noticed the bizarre scene unfolding and saw their patrol car being dragged away by our neighbor. I couldn't comprehend the thoughts racing through his deranged mind, but his actions clearly indicated that he had lost touch with reality. Later on, he was subjected to a mandatory psychiatric evaluation, which he sorely needed. When we witnessed this spectacle, we all rushed outside, realizing that the officers were less concerned about the trespassing and more focused on the fact that their car was being stolen. They commanded the neighbor to exit the vehicle, and to everyone's astonishment, he complied. Given his history of being uncontrollable, I had anticipated him driving away without a care. However, he surprisingly obeyed the officers' orders, albeit reluctantly. The perplexed officers promptly called for backup, realizing they were dealing with an unprecedented situation. As the neighbor stepped out of the stolen police car, it became evident only when he drew nearer that he was brandishing a knife, sprinting toward one of the officers with malicious intent. It was inconceivable that this maniac would attempt to attack a police officer simply because he wouldn't let him steal the car. Fortunately, no one was harmed as the other officer swiftly retrieved his taser and fired it, incapacitating our neighbor. Unlike in other parts of the world, firearms aren't the immediate resort for the police in our country. The assailant lay on the ground, subdued, while a collective sense of confusion enveloped the scene. Another police car arrived, and our unhinged neighbor was swiftly confined in the back, en route to his arrest for the attempted assault on a police officer, attempted car theft, trespassing, and wielding a deadly weapon. Considering the knife he had and the severity of his threats against my wife, the charges against him were substantial. Given his behavior, it was clear that he needed a comprehensive evaluation to determine his mental state and whether he was fit to stand trial. Surprisingly, the evaluation results indicated that he was mentally stable. This was a stark contrast to the belligerent and unhinged individual we had witnessed previously. In court, he appeared as a completely different person, comprehending the gravity of his actions and lacking a substantial defense. Although traces of drugs were detected in his system, it was speculated that they might have influenced his altered state of mind. Nevertheless, he was held fully accountable for his deeds, and antagonizing the police was unquestionably unwise. People regarded the police as heroes, and assaulting an officer for no reason wouldn't bode well for anyone. Our neighbor was destined for a lengthy prison sentence for his assault on the officer and theft of the police car. The question arose regarding the initial events that led to the police being called. A man of his stature brandishing a weapon and threatening a woman never looked good. Trespassing was the least of his concerns at that point. Instead, he received an additional 2 years in jail, in addition to the 5 he was already sentenced to for the assault and theft charges. When someone is arrested for separate offenses, there are 2 possible approaches: serving the sentences concurrently, resulting in a total of 5 years, or serving them consecutively, which would entail 7 years of imprisonment. The court decided on the latter, ensuring he paid the price for each crime individually. There may be countless tales of eccentric neighbors out there, but I have yet to come across one more extreme than this. I'm relieved that he is currently behind bars, and I sincerely hope he won't return to our neighborhood. The absence of his incessant yelling has restored peace to our lives, and I can only hope that he learns to control himself in the future. Whether he requires assistance for drug addiction or simply needs to exhibit better self-restraint, he has 7 long years to contemplate and make changes. However, I have a strong inclination that he won't be residing next to me once he regains his freedom. The next one is a pro-revenge story. This happened years ago, 1985 to be exact. I was 45 when this happened, 81 now. So after my second retirement, I started doing property management. I bought this 2,500 square foot luxury home with the sole intention of renting it out. Now, I didn't know how bad the homeowner association was, but when I became the owner, I soon found out. This all took place in a span of 2 years. Karen would literally have a problem with everyone in the neighborhood. Trash cans left out? Fined. Loud music after 10 p.m.? Fined. Yard sale without permission? Fine. Removing dead plants and replanting without approval? You get fined. It went on and on like this. Now the community could run for the Homeowner Association Board, but the Homeowner Association Board chose the president. 6 out of the 10 members on the board liked Karen, so she always kept her job. Her husband was in the medical field, so he made a lot of money. It got to a point where she was called Queen Karen in the neighborhood due to her dishing out homeowner association fines. I used to go in person to collect the rent because the people who rented my house were good friends of mine. I did this for months. So I would park my car in front of the garage. My friends and I were having some music on, but it wasn't that loud. Queen Karen came over driving her golf cart and said, "Queen Karen, excuse me?" Me, "Yeah?" Queen Karen, "You have to turn that music down, it's too loud." I told her that it was 8 p.m. and that even loud music can be played until 10. She wasn't having it and demanded that I do so. Now my friends and I kept the music going and we were enjoying ourselves. She proceeded to get angry and fined me. Now most people would just take the abuse and pay the fine, but not me. I went to the Homeowner Association Board, contested the fine, and won. From that point on, Queen Karen made it her personal mission to destroy me. She would idiot and fuss about every little thing. I fought what I could, but I did end up paying for some of it. She also went after my tenants, which made things worse for me. I had a sit-down with my friends one night to discuss the problem. When I parked my car, Queen Karen came over in her robe and said I had to park somewhere else. I did because I didn't want to start anything. We saw her go back into her house and embrace a man who isn't her husband. We were being noisy, and we came to the conclusion that she was cheating on her husband. Spoiler alert, she was. My friends and I told Queen Karen's husband. I'm sure he did some investigation because 3 months later they divorced and he was moving his stuff out. Now gossip said that Queen Karen got nothing because she was the one that cheated and she didn't have a job, so she wasn't entitled to the money. From this point on, Queen Karen had a massive decline in the quality of life that she had. She sold her car and got a cheaper one, and she adopted different dressing habits. But even after the divorce, she never got a job, and she was still living somewhat better than everyone else. Fast forward to 1986 in February, Queen Karen and the Homeowner Association had been giving out fines for very obscure things and increased monthly dues. Having trash cans out a couple of hours early, or after the trash man left, would result in a fine. Targeting people that had older or dirty cars went on and on. The other people in the community and I were sick of the crap that she and the Homeowner Association were pulling. So at the next meeting, we made our voices heard and voiced our concerns. Queen Karen said that the community had been falling behind on repairs, and that the dues and increase in fines were necessary, especially if people weren't maintaining their own property. She said that it was in the yearly budget report and that we should have read it. The other pissed residents and I went and read the statement. None of us had read it because we took it as junk mail and disregarded it. But we read the whole statement cover to cover. Queen had increased the Homeowner Association budget by 15%, and where that extra money was going remained unknown. We went over to her house the next day and demanded to know where the extra money was being spent, but she refused several times. She closed the door and went back to watching TV. We filed a joint lawsuit to find out where the money was going. In June, we found out, cue the revenge. Queen Karen was living off Homeowner Association fines and dues. The increase was because she was running out of money. She still didn't have a job, so she embezzled from the Homeowner Association so she wouldn't have to get a job. She got busted. We called the police for her embezzling the money. She was charged with fraud and extortion. The neighbors and I filed a joint lawsuit against Karen to get reimbursement as well. Because she had no money, she had to mortgage her house to pay us all. She later went to federal prison for 6 years with no parole. Because she went away, no one was paying on her house. The bank foreclosed on it and it was bought by someone else. So when she got out in 1992, she was homeless. Honestly, the majority of us didn't want to ruin her life like this. Had she toned down the excessive fines, we would have let her be. But she had to double down and steal from us because she didn't want to get a job like everyone else. The next one is a petty revenge story. Might be a little long, so I apologize. So for a bit of context, I, 24F, used to work at a sandwich shop named after a public transportation system in my hometown when I was 19. One day, my manager and I were working a shift together after the lunch rush had ended. She was mostly confined to the back, balancing the safe and washing dishes, while I handled cleaning the front of the house and the line. I noticed a woman approaching the store and quickly made my way behind the line to wash up. She entered with her phone pressed to her ear, and I was already on edge because of that alone. Customers who refuse to get off the phone to communicate their order are always difficult to deal with. I welcomed her and asked what I could get for her. She curtly replied, "A turkey sandwich," then turned back to her phone. Throughout the time I tried to take her order, she made rude and snarky comments about my occupation, saying things like, "Just make the damn sandwich, how hard can that be? I swear you're all so stupid, it's hard to believe you have jobs." I was irritated, but continued to smile, although I could no longer force it to reach my eyes. I asked her what dressing she would like, and she simply said, "Mustard," refusing to answer whether she wanted regular, spicy, or honey mustard. So I just put regular mustard on it after she angrily told me to stop asking stupid questions. I finished making the sandwich, rang up her order including the sandwich and drink, and hoped she would leave after she was done. Nope. She finished 2/3 of her sandwich and came stomping back to my register, slamming the sandwich on the counter and incessantly ringing the bell to get my attention. I set down the prep I was doing, put on the best smile I could muster, and returned to my register. She yelled at me, demanding that I remake her sandwich for free because she had clearly asked for honey mustard. And I had put the wrong mustard on her sandwich to spite her. My manager intervened, having heard everything from me making this lady's sandwich to that point. She came up behind me and saw that the woman had eaten the majority of the sandwich. She told the woman that she seemed satisfied with the sandwich and refused to remake it. The woman then picked up her sandwich and threw it at me. Luckily, it only landed on my jeans and apron, but my manager said she needed to leave or she would call the police. The lady continued to argue, claiming that her sandwich was now ruined and we needed to remake it for her. My manager pushed me behind her and told me to go finish my prep. I was just on the other side of the wall and could hear everything. Since my manager's boyfriend was a cop, she pulled out her phone, called him, and started telling him how one of her employees had just been assaulted by a horrible customer. I had met him several times, and he was an awesome guy. Well, this scared off the customer, and we went about our day-to-day duties. I ended up quitting a few months later when one of my coworkers thought it would be funny to touch me with a cookie tray she had just pulled out of the oven. Fast forward to a couple of months ago. I went to that same shop because I was in the area and felt like having a sandwich. I did a double take when I saw the same woman behind the counter, and it seemed like she recognized me because she had a shocked expression. We went through the motions of making my order, and at the register, I gave her a big smile as I dropped a $5 bill into the tip cup and said, "I hope you have a blessed day." She turned red hot in the face when I did this and tried to say something, but my old assistant manager came out front. He saw me and got excited, starting to talk about his promotion and his wife. When the woman went into the back, my friend started laughing about how he could hear the pettiness in my voice from the back. He said he had to see the look on my face, and that our old manager would have been proud. My manager now works a decent-paying job and married her cop boyfriend. I also work a decent job, and luckily, I don't have to deal with customers at this one. Even though I would have loved to do something truly petty, I refused to stoop to her level. I've heard kill him with kindness my entire life when someone wrongs me, so I decided to try that approach, especially since I know how rough it can be to work in customer service. I didn't want to cause this woman the same level of stress and anxiety she caused me. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Now, before I start, here's a bit of context for this situation. I work in the boat industry as an engine tech and parts painter. I know, quite a broad range right there. Anyway, the company I work for is quite old, and the building I work in is even older. The heating system is trash, and we really lack anything in the way of air conditioning, and it's boiling outside right now. Earlier today, I started overheating really quickly as the temperature rose in the building. I have a medical condition where my body can't regulate temperature well, meaning I am at risk of passing out. I was going to get a bottle of water from the fridge to help me cool down when I was stopped by one of the company's managers. Let's call him Kyle for this story. Kyle: where are you going? Me: I was only going to get some water. Kyle: you're supposed to be working right now. You can get the water during the coffee break. Me: I don't think you understand that I can actually be in danger from this heat right now. So, could I please go get one bottle of water? Kyle: no. You're not authorized to leave your work before the clock strikes. Now shut up and get back to work. Me: roger that. Keep in mind that this conversation was held in front of my coworkers. Cue malicious compliance. I got back to work, making sure to put on some extra coal just to make sure I made up for lost time. Basically, I was forcing my body into shock, and heat stroke was just around the corner. Fast forward around 30 minutes, I had to tell my coworkers through my strained breath that I don't feel too good. It was even worse now as I was working on the deck of one of these boats, give or take 3 meters above the floor. When I made my way towards the ladder to climb down, I only managed to say, "Oh crap," as I fell off the back and headed straight for the concrete floor below me. Luckily for me, some coworkers reacted fast enough and managed to catch me before my head split open on the floor. I woke up in an ambulance around an hour later. The EMTs were checking my vitals and actually helping me. My boss came up to the door and asked me what happened. I told him exactly as I told you guys, and I also told him to check with my coworkers if he didn't believe me. Long story boring, I was taken to the hospital for a checkup just to make sure I didn't suffer any kind of trauma from the fall. A buddy of mine came with me to make sure I got there and back safely. A few hours passed and my buddy got a call. He picked it up and it was Kyle. My buddy handed me the phone and I heard Kyle on the other end apologizing for almost getting me killed. The short version is that he was heavily reprimanded for what he told me and was put on watch. He didn't lose his position though, so I guess I didn't fully win, but he was liable for the medical compensation for my situation. I did forgive him, and just to rub it in a bit, I had to ask him, "Am I authorized to get water next time?" And my buddy just laughed. The next one is an entitled People Story. Background: I used to exclusively sell cell phones inside a middle-class retail chain. This service was actually run by a different company than the retail chain itself. We would provide all of the nicer cell phones, iPhones and Samsung Galaxies, $800, $1,500, and the retail chain provided the cheaper prepaid cell phones. My team and I would sell all of the phones, but only we could sell the nicer phones. At the time of this incident, I was the team lead for my store, meaning that when it came to the nicer cell phones, I had the final word. We never discounted the phones directly, but various service providers would authorize rebates and incentives, and that was it. When you bought a nicer phone from us, we would directly pull up your service provider account and set up the phone, and they would provide any discounts, credits, or rewards. We were also able to report fraud through this system. The story: it was a slow day at the cell phone station, so I decided to do a cold sale lap of the store, leaving a newer team member. Let's call her Tina, in charge of the cell phone area for the 30 minutes it would take to find someone to buy a phone. I was gone maybe 10 minutes before I got a call from the store manager asking me to get back to the cell phone station because there was an issue. When I got back, I saw Tina about to cry while an overweight Karen was holding a small piece of paper and yelling at her. As I got closer, I heard the word coupon, and I immediately knew what was about to go down. Less than a week ago, Tina had accepted several fake coupons, my day off and her partner called out without telling me, and severely discounted the nicer phones with the fake coupons. She was new, and we hadn't covered that she could never discount the phones herself, nor that we never had coupons for these. Afterwards, I made it clear to her that our team would never discount the phones. Cut back to the present, I saw the store manager watching from around the corner. I waved him off and strode forward. Facing Tina, I asked what was going on. Tina let me know that the Karen wanted the newest iPhone and was trying to use a 99% off coupon. Before she could continue, the Karen cut in. I don't know what the issue is. She accepted these coupons last week from my friends. Karen then pushed the coupon towards Tina, as if that would magically change the situation. I told Tina to take an extra 15 in the back and then turned back to the Karen. I was pissed, and I think it was showing just a bit because Karen flinched. While I hadn't been in too much trouble over the coupon issue the week prior, I had been passed over for a promotion to another store because of it, and I was not in the mood. Not only was she basically trying to steal a phone, but she had specifically targeted Tina. Who told you that Tina would accept this ridiculously fake coupon? Was it Kathy? We had records for the nicer phones, and Kathy's account was banned from every one of our locations because of the prior incident. Karen became pale at the last question, and I think she realized that she was in trouble. She tried to mention something about the retail chain accepting these types of coupons, and I laughed. I explained that the retail chain didn't have any say over the nicer phones, and that we worked for a different company. She tried to insist that we had already taken these coupons before, so why couldn't she use them now? At this point, I was done and told her in no uncertain terms that we would never discount the nicer phones, and that she would not be purchasing phones from this location, period. Fortunately for me, the store manager had hung around and I called him over. Can you call asset protection? I picked up the coupon and handed it to him. Using a fake coupon is stealing, and this woman also knows Kathy from last week. Karen tried to run, but we were lucky that the police were already at the entrance for an entirely separate issue. I heard later that Karen did get past them initially, but the police were informed of the situation and were able to detain Karen before she made it to her car, and then arrested her. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened after that, but I did give a statement about this incident 2 weeks later to the police, so I think charges were filed. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.